Hello everybody. To those I've not met, I'm Rebekah Sutcliffe. I'm an Assistant Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, but I'm working here at the moment for the partnership in Oldham, leading on place-based integration and thriving communities. So just a kind of whistle stop really, so that you understand kind of who I am and the leadership journey I've taken. I've been a police officer 25 years in February, God forbid, but along the way, because I've joined the police, it's an organisation that you have to start as a constable. I did join on the graduate entry scheme, but you nevertheless have to kind of take the route through every rank. But along the way, I've also spent quite a lot of time, particularly once I became a superintendent and beyond, on secondment to what became the Combined Authority, so to the Public Service Reform team in the early stages of us really just starting to think about devolution, and that's when I first met and worked with Carolyn. And then subsequently I had the lead for the kind of complex dependency work within the Combined Authority. But just kind of rewinding a little bit to the kind of journey that I've taken, I think one of the really important things about the journey that I have taken, and that many of you I know will be taking, is that whilst it can feel frustrating, particularly if you are on some kind of fast track scheme, at the time I can remember thinking, why do I have to do all this kind of frontline stuff? Why do I have to take a route where I work at every level of the organisation? And in policing in particular, it's something that puts a lot of people off joining, is the fact that they have to start as a constable. The thing which I didn't realise it would give me, but that in hindsight and along the way I have realised, is that exposure to how it is for people that live in the kind of real world. So the fact that I have been through lots of doors and in lots of houses with people that live in poverty, that are experiencing distress, who are very vulnerable, are in crisis, but that I've done that where I've got to be the problem, that I'm the person that responds to that. I'm not doing it from a managerial position, I'm doing it from a real point of view where I've got to have that relationship, talk to that person and get to know them in order for me to be able to do my job. So that whilst I didn't do that as a constable, I was a constable for 3 years, it was long enough. And then as a sergeant, I did that as a detective and as a uniform sergeant. I worked in public protection. I think as a leader, whilst you yourself are not necessarily in a leadership role at that point, it does give you something really important, that you remember who you are there to serve and who you are operating for, but also you remember, if you make yourself reflect, how frustrating it can sometimes be when you're on the front line, where you haven't got access to the right equipment, where you're working for people that perhaps don't respond to the things that are frustrating you. So actually I think it's a really important thing to kind of, if you have that opportunity, is rather than just leap to the next level of the organisation, if you have got ambition and aspiration, is to really learn from that opportunity and think about what it does teach you in terms of that leadership role. So I've only got one slide, and I've done that deliberately because I wasn't entirely sure what Carolyn would say, and I wanted to kind of adjust it accordingly. Carolyn talked about leading with purpose, and implicit in that word purpose is that leading with passion, finding something that you care about. I just want to talk a little bit about a different perspective on that, is that it's important to have a purpose yourself. So what do I come to work for? And it is important to think about what motivates you. But it's also really important to think about that in terms of the people that work with you, and for those of you that are in a management position already, for those people that work for you. And I think in the public sector, I'm doing quite a lot of work at the moment where I'm kind of getting to understand the way that the acute health system operates, and I think they're really on a journey with this, is that, you know, for example, a purpose is not, let's hit the 4-hour A&E waiting time. A purpose is let's keep people well, let's keep people safe, let's keep people, enable people to work, to live good lives. But in a small way, there'll be things within your areas of work where there's a point or a purpose to what you do. And I think, again, that doesn't have to be something that is about changing the world, but it may simply be, I'm going to give a really good service to the customers that I work with, or it may be that I'm going to support at a particular point in time. It may be that you're supporting people you work with through a difficult time, or it may be that you are setting a direction. This is where we're going. You know, we are going to give a better service. We're going to treat people kindly. We're going to make children safe. Whatever it may be, and it will be different for all of you in different areas of work, is really thinking about that and reminding yourself that that's what you're there for. Because I do think sometimes we can get sucked into, particularly if you're in an area of work where you kind of got lots of kind of indicators or outputs that you are having to service and support, that you do think about that purpose. And then the kind of leading people point is very linked to that. One of the most striking experiences I've had on my leadership journey was that I listened to a guy called Chris Keeble, who was the second in command at the Battle of Goose Green, and a military leader wouldn't ordinarily be somebody that I would necessarily, despite the fact I've got a police background, find at all inspiring. It's not my kind of thing at all. I'm much more kind of community rather than military kind of focus, but it really, really inspiring guy. And he talked about an experience that he'd had after leaving. He was in the Paris, after leaving the Paris, where he'd worked in industry, and he'd been to a factory in Birmingham, where he walked into this factory and he'd been struck by the fact that all these people were just connected to these machines and were just almost like units of production, that they'd become part of the kind of fabric of the factory, and they'd lost their kind of human identity. And he talks about how that had caused him to reflect on what is work for? What do we come to work for? Now, of course, we come to work to do the job that we are paid to do, and there's a product of that. But we also come to work because it makes us feel better as people, and we are, if we're lucky, kind of enriched by the experience of work. That we you know, there are days where I go home where I'm utterly deflated, but more often than not, there are days where I go home where I'm buzzing, because I've done something that I love, that I've done a good thing for somebody that I work with, or for somebody in the community. I've made a change where I think it's exciting, and if I feel like that, so do all of you, and so do all of the people that you work with, and again, work for you. So I would just challenge you really to think about, if you are working in a team, and you do have people working for you, how much do you know about them as a person? Do you know the name of their partner? Do you know if they've got a partner? Do you know if they've got caring responsibilities? Do you know if they've got children? Do you know what their children's names are? Do you know what they do outside of work? Do you pay any interest in that? Do you know if life's good for them, life's not so good for them? Do you know what motivates them at work? And for me, it's really important that you do, because actually work will be a better place for them and for you if you see a person's work experience as part of the entirety of who they are, rather than just, are they delivering for me what they are asked to deliver at work? And if you do that, believe you me, they will deliver more of the things that they come to work officially to be paid to do. So that's the kind of people bit. And in a personal way, I have worked with and for some people who have got that really right, and some people who have got it really wrong, and the vast majority probably somewhere in the middle. And boy, has it made a difference to my effectiveness at work, but also to my well-being as a person. Leading change. So I, like Carolyn, am a person that absolutely loves change, and it can be an absolute nightmare for people that don't really love change. But you've seen that kind of change curve. You know, I'm at my happiest if I'm kind of right on the edge of it. Although I do think that changes subtly as you get older. I kind of probably noticed that I like change a little bit less as I got older, but I really was a nightmare with it when I was younger. That really wasn't what I wanted to say about change. What I wanted to say about change was about how we do change and who you engage in change. So, change for me is at its worst when it is a plan on a page that is a finished product that's decided what it's going to do in an 18th month programme plan that doesn't amend itself along the way, and that what we do is we hold ourselves purely to account for the progress of that. You do need some of that, so I'm not for a moment saying that you don't need a plan, you don't need rigour. What I'm saying is that the nature of change needs to involve everybody that's got a stake in it, so that people have a voice in it, that they're committed to it, they feel that they've shaped it, but also that it's incremental and flexible within a framework. And it does absolutely need a framework, but within that framework it's incremental and flexible. Because I sometimes think that we defeat ourselves at the outset by setting ourselves objectives that feel overwhelming. So with some of the place-based work, which I'm going to talk about briefly next, the ambition that we're setting ourselves, which is let's integrate the way we work across public service boundaries, let's do that fundamentally differently, let's think about how we change our roles, let's engage differently with the community, let's challenge the system around us. It feels massive, it's so enormous that you could be overwhelmed by the scale of the kind of ambition that we've got. So for me it's, let's just have a go, let's start, let's try something new, let's see what we learn, and then let's apply that somewhere else and then learn again. So almost not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to get it wrong, not worrying about how it might reflect on us, just kind of leading incrementally. But also, if you are leading change, you know, be optimistic, be determined, be curious and listen, but don't be afraid to try. You know, change actually can be good, is really good fun if what it means is we end up doing things better and giving a better service to the community. So finally I'm going to talk a little bit interchangeably about places and systems. So the work that I'm leading here at the moment is got two kind of elements to it. One is trying to work out and implement a new way of working together as public services in places, however we may define that. And I think what we're finding as we work through this work is the geographic kind of footprint of place-based working matters less than how is it that we work together against organisational boundaries in communities, however they are defined, across organisational boundaries. So how do we share information, how do we problem solve together? Really importantly, what are the relationships that we need to build with each other in order that we can, and this goes back to the purpose, in order that we can give an improved service that responds better to the needs of our communities, but does that in a way that is also more cost effective with the shrinking resource that we have. But it's not just about public services, it's also about how do we work very, very differently with communities. So how do we bring the voice of community and people that live in communities into service design? How do we involve them in developing solutions, whether that solution is to something that is about the level of obesity in Oldham, whether it's to do with antisocial behaviour in Oldham, whether it's to do with fly tipping, whether it's to do, well, the whole range of things. The community themselves, where there is that kind of effect so directly on people, have a role in developing the solutions. And those might not be the solutions that we would develop if we didn't listen to that voice. So I was at a workshop about obesity last week. Some of you may have been there, and it was all about what do we need to do differently to tackle the challenge of obesity and the people being overweight in Oldham. And it struck me that the vast majority, and Caroline tells a similar anecdote about a mum, it struck me that the vast majority of people in the room were from public services, and the vast majority of them were not overweight or obese. And many of them were people, because of the roles that they'd chosen, that were kind of really into physical exercise, and were almost the people who were already converted. So there really is something about, if we're thinking about what does effective primary care look like for the future, what relationship should a school have with the community that it works in, is you've got to see that outside in rather than inside out. And we do need to think, I think it's the biggest challenge in a way, is less the reform of the services that we've got, but more, how do we, particularly in a place like Oldham, where people's life experiences for a lot of the population will not be ours, that we really need to listen to them about what it is to be a service user and what would better services look like, and how could we work with them and for them to improve their lives. So very finally, systems. It's very linked to the place point that when we come to kind of solve problems of service delivery, around performance, on a daily basis we're butting up against the system. So that might be something as simple as, for those that have been involved, there's an integrated place-based working pilot in Holts and Lees. For those that don't know, there is an integrated place-based pilot in Holts and Lees. And one of the things there was from service users was that they are a place-based team, the PCSOs that work in that team wear uniform, and it came to light that the people that they're working with would prefer it if they didn't. We butt up then against a system condition, which we've still not been able to resolve, which is a PCSO is not insured to come to work if they don't do so in uniform. So,
it was awful.
Oh, don't worry, I didn't even notice. That's an example of a system condition which is frustrating the achievement of purpose. Other examples we've had are housing allocation policy for social housing doesn't necessarily prioritise the people that most need social housing, particularly people that have previously been in debt, even if they've got children who really do need to be living in a better standard of housing. But it could be something really simple. One from my kind of life as a divisional commander in Stockport was that our performance for waiting times for allocating appointments for people that called the police for non-urgent calls. You know, when we looked at that, it was we just had people on duty at the wrong times, and those people who were on duty weren't necessarily having a regular dialogue with some of their colleagues. So it was about resource allocation and relationship building. But in a kind of a bad world of bad performance management, rather than one that acts on the system and seeks to improve it, the conversation from me to the people responsible for the improvement of that system would be, our performance is bad, we're not hitting enough appointment times on time, sort it out. Rather than, can we get together and collectively work together to understand why this thing is happening? And as a leader, taking responsibility for supporting staff on the front line to find a solution to the problem. It's a really small example, but you can probably think of similar things in your own environment where something's not quite working as you would like it to, or there's a performance indicator that's telling you something isn't right. So what I would say there is, try and understand why that's not happening, but do that in partnership with your colleagues. If you can do it in partnership with a service user, so much the better. But as a leader, your job is not to hold to account in a way which is, this is not my problem, it's yours, sort it out. It is our problem, and let's work together to find a solution. And that's not about kind of weak leadership, it's actually about strong and effective leadership, where you place an expectation that a solution will be found, but that you have a stake in it. I'm probably out of time. I'll take questions as well, as I'm sure Carolyn is. And thanks all for listening.